Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Richard. How are you?
I'm very well. I am currently enjoying the buzz of having seen you two at the Sphere in Las Vegas last night, which, apart from the fact that it's just the most incredible concert with a band that's consistently amazing. I've been fortunate enough to see concerts since I was like in my 20s,
Yeah.
with U2 concerts specifically. But the Sphere is next level. It's a whole different category of experience. The technology is amazing. And a lot of the renderings that are visible on this internal Sphere screen that created is actually generated by AI. So a lot of the design work has been generative AI originated, and that's really interesting. We won't have time to dig into it today. I'll do some more research, but for those of you who love music, who love great experiences, and love great design, go to the Sphere. It's an incredible experience. I highly recommend it.
Wow, that sounds amazing. What a way
Yeah,
to start the weekend off.
yeah. So we got a lot of news this week. The big stories are that OpenAI have released yet another model. This is a text to
Yeah.
video model. We're going to talk about that today. Gemini 1.5 was also released earlier this week, and that's
hmm
kind of a big game changer for them. And then there's a bunch of other stuff. So let's just kind of run through this. We'll get back to the big stories at the end because those obviously going to require a little bit more attention. But the US Patent Office, they've made an announcement which I think is really important to creators out there. What are they talking about now?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to AI ethics, when it comes to regulation and guidance in terms of where AI fits in our society, it was super important for the patent office to come out with this guidance.
Right.
And basically what they said is that an AI can't be named an inventor on a patent. It has to be a
Right.
human. And a human can use AI. However, they themselves need to play a significant role in the creation. And so I
Right.
think for a lot of companies out there, for a lot of creators out there that weren't sure where the government would come out in terms of AI in the patent process, this is
Mm-hmm.
extremely important guidance. And
Mm.
I think you're going to see that also with copyright later this year. But
Yeah.
kudos to the government for even producing this clarity for creators and ensuring that humans ultimately are at the center of our laws versus technology.
Yeah. And I think you're right. We're starting to see that AI is, not to overuse this phrase, but a co-pilot to the pilot's work, the human being the pilot. Looks like the patent
hmm
office and a lot of the copyright issues are going to be focused on the human creator, and then consider that co-pilot or that assistant to that work would be the AI, it's a good clarification. Somewhat unrelated to technology, but very related to AI, is this announcement that came out this week in Pakistan. So they've just had another round of elections, and Imran Khan, who is currently imprisoned, but was able to generate a AI facsimile of himself. Tell us about
Yeah.
this story. This is we talked about this last year. It happened already last year. It's happened now again. This is
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
nuts.
So this is wild, and I think this really hammers home why regulation will be important, why education and literacy is going to be super important in the coming months and in the coming years as these models become more capable. So last year we covered that Imran Khan was imprisoned by the current government, and he, while in prison, was able to clone his voice and reach his supporters using a clone of his voice, just spreading
Mhm.
the message. And so they had their elections last week and they won. Literally from in prison, he was able to get his supporters out and they were able to get at least a good enough coalition where they're able to get a lot of representation in the government that is going to be formed. And so as a result, he has been freed from prison, so he's no longer imprisoned, and we're not quite sure what's going to happen. There is some debate as to who is supposed to be in power, but you're starting to see where people can use AI if they feel like their voices are being silenced to reach the masses still. But there are
Yeah.
also questions about authenticity and whether or not people are even aware that that's the case that's happening in the background. So lots of questions to be asked, lots of discussions to be had with
Yeah.
politicians and governments around the world as to what's going to happen, because this year is going to be a historic year in terms of the number of global elections that are happening. And so expect this to play out in multiple different conversations in different countries across the world.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting, especially considering news that came out of Russia this morning as well. Moving away from politics for a second, we've got some kind of expected news. NVIDIA are just on a rocket ship right now. Tell us a little bit about why their valuation is so high and why we should expect it to remain this way for a little bit longer.
Sure. NVIDIA is one of those companies. If you had invested $1,000 in NVIDIA 10 years ago, that would be worth $175,000 today.
Wow.
That is
investment.
Exactly.
I think I actually have it in my portfolio. So
good for you. And one of the things I want to kind of look at in terms of NVIDIA is now the fourth most valuable company in the world. So you have Microsoft, who recently became number one, Apple, Saudi Aramco, and now NVIDIA. And what you're seeing is that the world is going to need a lot of these AI chips that will accelerate computing for robotics, for AI, for VR technologies. And so NVIDIA is in a pole position right now to supply that. And until the world can meet that demand, their stock is likely just going to keep on running. And this week you had Jensen Huang, the CEO, doing a tour, and he was in the Middle East, and he was talking about sovereign AI and the fact that every country will need to own their intelligence and invest in that. And so you're going to start seeing a lot more investment in these chip technologies and these companies like NVIDIA. But kudos to them. They're doing super, super great.
Yeah, and that's just on the back of last week's news about, Sam Altman suggesting that we need about $7 trillion to do the fabrication. NVIDIA right off the mark, straight into the market, doing a roadshow. They are not wasting any time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, there's $7 trillion that somebody's going to get, and I think NVIDIA is at the front of the line for that one.
So Jensen Huang was in the Middle East, and he was asked outrightly by the head of AI in the UAE, how many GPUs can $7 trillion buy? So there are a lot of people that are certainly looking at what that looks. Yeah.
Okay, cool. A little bit, we're going to change to something a little bit more practical right now. A lot of us use Slack, and a lot of us are using products like Zoom or some other meeting technology. Otter and Slack both came out with AI options. Otter being an AI-driven business, but Slack specifically now starting to bubble up their features. We had spoken about this 2 weeks ago. We had talked about how AI really isn't AI until it starts to appear in the applications that we use every day. Otherwise, it's really just, some kind of a novelty. Let's talk a little bit about how these models and these features are starting to find their way into everyday apps. And really, are they significant changes, or are they just like minor changes, or are we just kind of seeing that novelty expressed a little bit in these applications that we use?
Yeah, I think it's a very important question for startups to think about, but also for some of the incumbents to start thinking about where the value add will be with AI within their business. For Slack, we've seen Slack becoming the darling child of conversational chats in the enterprise and with a lot of companies. But we also saw where Microsoft and Zoom started to really eat back at that market share. And then Slack was sold to Salesforce, of course. Right. And I think Salesforce is in this position where they're trying to figure out exactly where AI fits in between their CRM business and with Slack. And so they're adding these new AI features as a paid add-on, but starting only with enterprise clients. Right. And I think that's such an interesting move from their perspective. Because one, there are lots of conversations to be had about like safety and security of these models, but as a paid add-on, it means that you're thinking this is separate from your core offering. And if you compare that to an Otter AI that is a native AI company, which would you choose? Do you choose to use Slack and then pay an additional cost to get AI services? Yeah. Or are you thinking that you want your AI to be native to do the things that you want? And of course, you then have the comparison between the co-pilots of the world within the Microsoft Office suite and Duet within the Google ecosystem. And so I do think SaaS companies are going to really need to have this debate as to whether or not a tool is enough in the age of AI, where companies are producing actual work. And so we look at the tools. I've used both of them. I haven't had a chance to try the Slack AI because it's only available for enterprise clients. But Otter is absolutely fantastic, and they're quickly iterating and grinding. So we're going to be tracking both of them closely.
Yeah. So this is something that you're going to be talking about in your post-show analysis. For those of you who watch the show and want more, we do have a premium subscription that allows you to go super deep on these topics. Chris does a post show on these things. SaaS is dead is going to come up in that conversation. Something that actually, I think, answers some of the questions about, whether to go native or whether to go embedded is the fact that Figma just released their TIE report from Forrester, and that is clearly a report that is focused on consolidation, stack consolidation, and the reduction of complexity within the stack framework. The message is very clear, and their headline in that, or their subject line in that email that they sent out is, they are looking to cut costs. They are looking to be a provider of cost cutting. And so these companies are coming straight out and saying, hey, you can cut people and resources and stack complexity by using these big platforms. And that's going to be interesting, because you would have thought that a lot of companies would be saying, hey, we're on the side of the employee. We're here for your teams. We're going to make sure that your teams are safe. But no, they're saying, no, we're actually on the side of the executives and the investors, and saying we are a product or a platform that helps you reduce costs. So that's a clear positioning change for these big billion-dollar companies like Figma. We're going to start seeing, I think, a lot of marketing and signaling from these SaaS companies saying, no, we're not actually there for just efficiencies and collaboration. We're here to make it so that you guys spend less money on people and the resources that go into managing these stacks.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, more in the show after that. I hope you dive into that. Okay. OpenAI, they've got a new feature, which I think, if I remember correctly, they announced that this feature would be available during their big dev platform release last year in October or something. But now the memory feature is starting to become available to early users, right? Is that correct?
So they didn't announce memory, but it's interesting how they're approaching it. So if you think of how OpenAI has been looking at features, they're really working backwards from AGI, and they're tackling these different problems that we need to start thinking about, or that we need to start iterating through as we get more capable systems. And so last November, they announced custom instructions, which in a sense is like memory. You were able to embed these custom instructions within ChatGPT, and it would be able to reference any data or information as it was responding to your prompts.
Right.
This week, they announced memory, which works in a very similar fashion, but it gives you a lot more granularity and control. And so you can tell the AI just when you're talking to it, hey, I want you to remember this. And the AI will remember it for future
conversations. This recall, right? This is not memory. They're calling recall.
No, they're actually calling it memory.
Okay.
I think there will be some rebranding that's going to be required as both of the features get rolled out to the masses, because I think you just right now have too much for people to think through. Should I use a custom instruction or should I use memory? But you can manage memory. There are questions to ask as to, well, when should the AI remember? What should the AI remember? When should it forget? Who should control what the AI remembers? And I think starting to just slowly think through how we design interfaces and user experiences around these capabilities are going to be important. And I think that's the opportunity for designers today. As you start to think of an AI first world, all of these things that we may take for granted today will need to actually design. And so thinking through what these experiences will be like is crucial. So it's exciting to see that these are going to be coming in the coming weeks and months, and I'm excited to give them a try.
Yeah, and this is for those of you who are designers or living in that product world, this is a conversation that I've been having almost daily now with design product leaders. They're asking the question, what is going to happen to the designer in terms of what are they actually making? Are they pushing pixels? Are they solving problems? What are they doing? And the other component to that is, what is it that they're actually designing? There is no UI in a lot of these conversations. It's a UI-less version of design, and that asks the hard questions as to what is it going to look like? What is it going to behave like? How are we going to interface with it? What is it going to look like when people and data start communicating in these UI-less environments? So, yeah, I think we probably should probably do an entire show just on that.
I think we should.
Yeah, let's do it. Cool. Let's now circle back to some of the new AI models that we mentioned. So Gemini and OpenAI, and also Meta is starting to use video as a teaching mechanism for their video. So let's talk about all those. Those are the big stories.
Yeah, so this week is likely going to set the stage for the year, and from what we can
Well, we
tell, it's
say
going
that
to.
every week. Every week we're like, this is the big week.
I know. I remember this week I saw the news about Gemini. We were working on the story, and just like right away you saw the story about Sora, and I'm like, wait, what? And so before we even get to those big stories, some other models came out this week that are very important. So Stability AI released their new Stability AI stable Cascade model, and it's a new text to image model that can run on consumer GPUs. So very efficient, but very powerful and very capable. And it's open source. So I think the open source community is continuing to make that push towards more capable, but smaller and more efficient models. And we also saw a model from Cohere that brings 101 languages into play.
And this is open source as well, right?
This is open source as well. And right now, when you think of a lot of the leading AI models, they're really trained in English or Chinese or the major languages. And with this new model, you now have up to 50 really small languages that didn't have a presence, like Uzbek or Amharic. And so seeing that AI can be represented within all of these languages, I think it's great. Personally, being from Jamaica, I'd love to see a model that can speak and understand patois. I think that's how you bring across accessibility and openness to AI to ensure that everyone in their own native language can reach to the capabilities that these models offer.
And it links back to what we were saying earlier about sovereign AI.
Yeah, exactly. And so beyond these models, you're starting to see what I'll say are video AI models. And there's a big caveat to that. So TikTok this week released Boximator. And what Boximator basically does, it allows you to control the movements within an AI-generated video. And we've seen this before. We've seen where Runway has their motion brush and you can have multiple different movements happening. But Boximator gives you a lot more granularity in terms of control. And it's super impressive. So I think from a creator standpoint, if you're looking to use these tools, again, when we talk about design, you're going to start seeing UI and UX come out that can help you to have that control over what you're actually trying to create. Editor Chris here. Unfortunately, I ran into a technical issue and I lost Richard's recording in the process. So I'll be re-recording the ending of this week's episode by myself. Bear with us. We're learning as we go. Okay, back to the top stories. Google this week surprised everyone with the release of Gemini 1.5. Now, remember, they just rolled out Gemini Pro internationally 2 weeks ago, and just last week, they launched Gemini Ultra. So this was totally unexpected. And at the time, I thought that would be the biggest story of the week. And here's why. Gemini 1.5 approaches the capabilities of Gemini Ultra, even though it uses way less compute. It's a mixture of experts model, and it has a context window of 1 million tokens. Now, I have to put that in context. Most large language models are way less than 100,000 tokens. In fact, popular models like Llama 2 are about 4,000 tokens, and at the top end, you have models like GPT-4 Turbo with 128,000 and Claude 2 with 200,000. At 1 million tokens, Gemini 1.5 is in an exclusive club. In fact, there's only one other model that I know of that is higher, and that's Magic's LTM1, which has a 5 million context window. So what can you do with 1 million tokens? Well, Google says it can handle about an hour of video, or 11 hours of audio, or 700,000 words, or a code base of, let's say, 30,000 lines of code. But the crazy thing is, Google says it has tested context lengths of up to 10 million tokens during its research. So they're just getting started. This is going to enable a whole new class of applications and use cases. That is a big deal. And I could go on, but the point is, it's looking like Google is finally ready to tango. Our top story of the day is from OpenAI, who unveiled their text-to-video model called Sora. And what I'm going to do, before we dive in, I'm just going to show you what this model is capable of. So the question is, if you came across these videos on social media, would you think twice about them being AI generated? I mean, they're not perfect. Of course, if you inspect them closely, you'll see inconsistencies, but they're pretty darn close. I mean, look at the lighting, look at the shadows, look at the subtle movements, look at the reflections. This is a really impressive product. So let's just start by saying that we don't know much about this new model as yet. It's only currently available to select people who are assisting OpenAI with testing or red teaming and checking out its capabilities. The videos that we're showing are based on those that have been shared publicly or from their technical report. Also, text-to-video is not new. You have lots of models from Meta, Google, Stability AI, and open source options. That said, the output that you're seeing from Sora is already state-of-the-art when compared to the leading models up until now, which I would say would be Runway and Pika. Also, a big difference between Sora and other models is that OpenAI's goal wasn't to build a creative tool like, let's say, Midjourney. They're building artificial general intelligence, and they needed a way for the AI to understand and simulate the physical world. And so you can think of Sora's video generation capabilities as a happy byproduct of that intent. And think about it. To achieve this level of quality suggests that Sora is doing a pretty decent job building an internal world model that mimics the real world in some sense. At the very least, we can say that it's developing a deeper understanding of the relationship between words and abstract concepts like science and also physical reality. That is impressive. In my opinion, Sora is about to do for video what ChatGPT did for chatbots. Basically, it's going to skyrocket it into a completely different league. And one last thing. Think of the leap in capability that happened between ChatGPT 3 and 4. This is Sora 1.0. Imagine what this looks like in 6 months, in a year, in 3 years. Needless to say, I'm very excited to get my hands on it and to see more examples from the preview. All right, that's all we have time for this week. If you want to see all the stories, just hop on over to imaginative.com. There are a bunch of stories on AI safety and security that I didn't get a chance to touch on, but that I would highly encourage you to read. And most importantly, if you liked our video, please hit the thumbs up and leave a comment below, even if it's just an emoji. Apparently it helps with engagement. And of course, hit that bell icon to subscribe and get notified whenever we drop a new video. So until next time, one love.